Okay, sorry guys again about the interruption. Today we will have actually instead of 2, we will have 4 videos if there's no more interruption. Okay, so let's continue. Sorry again, if you have any problems with the screen or the voice, please let me know as soon as possible so I can fix it up. All right, so let's go back to our class. So we're back in our servlet. We're creating an object from person, an object from dog. Let's call it d equals new dog. And I want to do the same thing with d. But this time, I'm gonna set the name of the dog. Okay, let's call the dog Spiky, for example. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set the dog property of the person to this dog that I created. It's actually D, right? All right. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to set an attribute to the request object. So this is the first time we're doing this. Please listen carefully. Our request object can have multiple attributes. And when you add this attribute later on, you can use this attribute in your JSP with your expression language. So we will see how it is done. For now, let's just see. First one, argument 0 is the name of the attribute. We can give whatever name that we like. Okay, so I'm going to give the name person. And I can add any object to, I can assign any value to this name that I created. And I'm going to give this person object, which is P. Later, we will see how we can find this attribute called person when we go to a JSP page. Okay, so the next thing we can do is to forward the page. So forward this servlet to a JSP. We haven't done this yet, so let's see how it's done. We have a class called request dispatcher. Okay, I call it RD. And you can get an object from request dispatcher. You don't need to use the new keyword here, actually. You can use the request object and get this method get request dispatcher. You have to give it a name. Okay. And then whatever name you provide here is the name of the page that you want to send the control to. So let me just fix this one and add an import on the top of the page. Okay. So once you add an import, then what you need to do is you need to use the forward method, and argument 0 and argument 1 are the request and response. So you have to send along your request and response objects. Of course, when we create our JSP page, we will come back here and write the full name, but for now we don't know what the name is, so we just leave it here. Now I'm going to create a page, a JSP, and we will forward the control from here to the JSP. So I'm going to go back to this tab, the source here, and add a JSP file. Where is JSP? Over here. I will call the JSP file, let's call it expression language demo. Okay, so I will go ahead and finish it. Now we know what the name is, so I can go back to my servlet and add the name, right? What's the name is el-d demo.jsp. Okay. Now I will go to my JSP and I want to see how, first of all, we want to see what is the problem with, we want to see what is the problem with use bean standard action. Okay, to demonstrate that, what I want to do is I want to print the name of the dog. So here, if you remember, we chose the name of the dog to be Spike. So I want to print the name of the dog, okay, using an object from person, because as you know, a person can have a dog, right? So let me go back to my JSP here. How this is done using JSP useBean, as you already know. JSP useBean, I'm going to give it a name, object. What's going to be the class? Class. What is the name of the class? The name of the class, we go here, is called person, right? So here I'm going to add person. We didn't add a package here, so this one's fine. What else do we need? I can actually use the short format here. Then I'm going to say JSP get property. Name is going to be object, of course, but the property I want is the name of the dog. Okay. So first of all, let me tell you that with useBean, you cannot say dog.name. Okay. You cannot say dog.name. You can only say one property. You cannot nest it like this. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to create a horizontal line. I want to try to do the same thing. This time I want to use a scriptlet. Let me just make sure that the recording is being done. Yep, the recording's being done, is fine. So what I want to do now, let's say display the name of the dog using scriptlet. Okay, so let's try to do it with scriptlet. If you remember, scriptlets are written in this format. So we have to do it the same way like we write Java. Person p equals to, but I'm going to get the object from the attribute. Remember what we did here? We added an attribute called person, and I'm going to show you how to get this attribute in our JSP. So what we have to say, we use the implicit object request request.get attributes. What is the name of the attribute? Is person, right? So I'm going to get it here. But remember, because this is going to return an object, the type of the return, the return type of get attribute is object. So therefore, you need to convert it, typecast it, okay, to person. Remember that bit. Then dog d equals to p dot get dog. Now we have the dog object as well. Now let's go ahead and print it. So p dot get name. Why is it not? Okay, there's a problem here. So I'm gonna say p dot get, right? You can see we can access the getters and setters now because we have declared the object successfully. Okay. Now I'm gonna say just write a message like the following. So I'm gonna say Iman's dog name, dog's name, space, dog's name is, and now we get the name of the dog. No, actually d dot get name. And you can see that this dog is coming from the person class. All right, now let's go ahead and see whether we can print the value of the dog with useBean. Let me tell you, if you do something like this, you're going to get an error message. Let's see. Okay, as I said before, you cannot use standard action in that format. So I'm just going to get rid of this now. Now let's try it one more time. Restart our Tomcat. There is still a problem. Class person, unable to compile class. Let's see what the problem is. Let's try to figure out. Unable to compile class for JSP. The server encountered exception. Line 13. Class person. Okay, it cannot find type called person. Let's go back and see what is wrong. If you guys can find out the problem on line 13, let me see if I have mistyped it. Class person, it's in a default package, right? Anybody can find out what the problem is? What I can do is I can add a package here. Let me see. Let's just add a package, call it ECJTU. And now we have to create the package as well. I'm gonna do the same thing here. This one also. And the dog as well. And then I'm going to import it, package ECJTU. Okay, and what I'm going to do now is I will go to the JSP and import ECJTU dot person, right? So I'm going to add this class. I think this will be fine. ECJTU say dot star. I add all the classes, right? Now let's see what the problem here is. ECJTU dot person. Okay, let me go ahead and run it this time. Let's see if we made any difference. Yes, okay, so let me see if I need to. Okay, I don't think we need this. I'm just gonna go put this one here so we get the person. If anybody can find out the problem, you can let me know if you find it out early enough. CJTU, the person. Okay, I think it's fine now. It's been. Oh, actually, the biggest mistake here is I have to run this file. I have to run this file because, okay, I found out the mistake. I have to run this file first because I'm creating the attribute here. You see, if I'm running this one, the attribute is not ready yet. So the problem lies here. Okay, I have to run this file and then we forward the control to this JSP page. Okay, so that was the mistake. So let's go ahead and run this one instead. Okay, so what we're getting is Iman's dog's name is Spiky, and then we're getting null. So let me go back and fix something. Okay, so we're making some progress. Let me stop. So remember, you also have to stop your Tomcats. Let me go back to here. I just have to write something. We put horizontal line. Now we say display the property dog's name using use being standard action. Okay, so I think now it's gonna look a little bit better. BR. I don't want to make the same mistake, so I'll run this file instead. Do the right thing, get the right result. Okay, so here lies the problem. You can see when I'm using scriptlets, everything is fine. I can get the value of dog's name Spiky. But when I'm using use being standard action, you can see all I'm getting is null, right? So this means that I cannot get the property of another property using standard action, right? So here's why we need to use expression language, okay? And let's just, let me stop this now. And let me just show you how easy it is to use standard action, okay? Now let me write down display the property dog's name using EL expression language. Expression language is very simple. All you have to do is you can do dog. Actually, I'm going to use the same message. The name of the name of dog. It's okay. I'll use a different message. The name of the dog is, here's the syntax. You use a $sign and brackets, okay? Inside the brackets, you will simply write person, which is the name of our attribute, dog.name. This is expression language, okay? This person is coming from the name of the attribute, right? This one, actually we added it here, person. It's the name of the attribute. Then dog is the belongs to person class, and then name of the dog, okay? So here's how it works. Let me run it. Okay, there is a problem. I don't know which one I ran this time. Did I make the same problem? I think I made the same mistake. Did I make the same mistake? Can you tell me what was the problem? Anybody knows? Why did we get that error message? Anybody knows why we got the error message? So let me run it. Can anybody tell me why we're getting this error message? We got it a few times. I just want to make sure that you guys understood what the problem was. Any idea? No idea? Okay, the problem is if I run this file in Eclipse, which is JSP, there's no way of creating this attribute. Therefore, none of these codes are going to run, especially this one and this one, because there is no attribute called person. But if I run this file instead, we can create that attribute and then access it. So let's see what happens this time. Okay, so first time we used scriptlets, it worked fine. Okay, where's the scriptlet? This is the scriptlet. So with scriptlet, you can create an object of person class and then get the dog property and print the dog's name. Fine. The only problem is you have to write too much code, right? Now, using use bean standard action, however, is going to be problematic because you cannot get a nested property of another property, right? Then what we did instead, which also worked, we used expression language, and you can see how simple expression language and how neat it is. So this person is coming from an attribute in the request, and then because that attribute is a class, we can access the properties of the class. And you can see you can have properties of properties. So I hope that you got an idea of the problem with useBean when it comes to situations like this. And so I'm going to stop this server. If you have any questions about this, do let me know. I'm gonna go back to our slides. So we just saw this example here, and I have provided the codes if you want to do it at home. All the codes are available. Maybe the messages that are displayed are a little bit different, but otherwise everything's same. So I'm going to skip through this. So the answer is we need to use expression language if we want to do certain things, for example, to get the property of another property. And also we saw how simple it is to access properties using expression language rather than useBean. So all we need to display properties with expression language is we need a $sign and brackets. Inside, we can write the name of the attributes and properties. Okay, so these are all the things that we discussed. So as you can see, with scriptlets, we had to write 3 lines of codes. But with expression language, we can summarize it into 3 words. Okay, so person is the name of the attribute we added to request, and dog is coming as the name of the object that belongs to person, and then there is a name. There is another important concept with expression language, which is called scoped variables. Okay, and I'm going to demonstrate to you what scope variable is in a second. And then also tell you that expression language uses scoped variables, it uses bean properties, and it uses collections. So expression language is a combination of different concepts in Java. What is a scope? What is a scope variable? A scope variable is basically are variables that have different accessibility, right? So we talked about page, request, session, and application scope before. And scope variables are actually the same concept. And then EL uses these scope variables. It uses bean properties, getters, and setters, and it also uses collections. So now we want to see how what these scope variables are, okay, and how we can access these scope variables. So in order to do that, I'm going to go back to Eclipse and create another project just quickly to show you what scoped variables are. So let me close this one, file, add a new project, dynamic project. I call it scope var scope variables demo. I'm gonna go next. I don't need web.xml. What I need is a servlet, first of all. So I'm gonna add a servlet and show you what the scope variables are. New servlet. Let's call this one just a class name, add scope attributes. And next, finish. Okay, so I'm going to go to do get. I'm going to comment this out. The first thing we do, something we learn is how to add an attribute to our request. Okay, so, and it's not always the case that your attributes are a class or an object. You can give it any name. Let's say attribute1. And I'm going to give it a value. Let's call it request value. Okay. So this is a request attribute. So, but request is not the only attribute that we have. We can have a session attribute as well. Okay. So again, this time, so let's call this one request. And then we will have session. Remember, we have 4 scopes. We have application scope, how to add a session attribute. We have a class called HTTP session. So this one is not available like this. We need to create an HTTP session. Session equals to, we say get servlet context. C is capital, get servlet context. So I'm going to import this. Get servlets. Actually, no, for session, I'm making a mistake. Sorry about that. For session, we have to get the session from the request object. So we say request.get session. Okay, this one's fine. And then we say session.set attributes. Set attributes. Okay, so first attribute I added is a request scope attribute. This one, attribute 2. I'll give it session value. Next one is application. For application, we will use get servlet context. Okay, so we say servlet context. Actually, we will talk about this topic later when we go back to servlets. I will tell you in detail what servlet context is. But just to find out what are the scope variables, I have to show you this example. So if you don't fully understand servlet context, please bear with me. We will get back to that concept a little bit later. Get servlet context. Okay, so I'm going to have to import servlet context, which is in the servlets javax.servlet package. Okay. Then I'm going to say application, same way, set attributes. This one is attribute number 3, and I'm going to call it application value. And later we will try to access these attributes in our JSP, and we'll see how it works. If you have any questions about them, please let me know. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is, now I added 3 attributes. What I'm going to do now is to add a request dispatcher. to forward this to another JSP where we can display things, right? Because with servlet, we don't have, haven't written HTML here. So I'm going to say request dot get request dispatcher. We'll figure out what the name of the JSP is. I'm gonna forward it here with requests and response object. All right, so let's go ahead and create a JSP file where we can display them. So I'm gonna call it display attributes. Attributes, and I will copy this name, display attributes, and let me put the name here so we can forward it. So remember, we have 3 attributes, one in the request, one in the session, one in the application. How we can access these different attributes in our JSP. So we go to our JSP file. We want to use expression language. Okay, so I'm going to create some ordered list and basically say, okay, first list item, we say attribute 1, and let's have another list attributes. And here I'm going to access attribute 1. How do I do it? Simple. A1. Remember, this name comes from here, right? A1. So regardless of the scope, the attributes are accessed with the attribute names, whether the scope is request or session or application. I will do exactly same thing. Ordered list. Actually, let me put this one here. And I will do the same thing for attribute 2 and attribute 3. Attribute 2, attribute 3, A1, A2, and A3. So which file do I have to run now? If I run this one, will it work? It will not work, so I have to run this one and forward it to the JSP page. So finish here, and let's see if we can access them. Okay, as you can see, we have our attributes. Okay, attribute 1, attribute 2, attribute 3. The first one is a request to scope, then we have session scope, and then we have application scope. The difference between these scopes, as we discussed earlier, is that if it's an application scope, if you can access it anywhere from any JSP page, okay? But the case with session and request are different, okay? We also have a page scope as well. So page can only be accessed from the current page, request from the requested page. Session goes to the session variable, as we will talk about session variable in the future. But what I wanted to show you today is that how we can use expression language to access properties, okay, either from request attribute, session attribute, or an application attribute. We saw how we can add an object, user-defined object to a request attribute as a request attribute, and then use it using expression language. Okay. Next week, we will continue with this. We will also see JSTL. So today you also learn how to forward the control from a servlet to JSP. If you have any questions about assignments or about today's topic, please let me know on QQ. I'm going to send you these files. Please start chatting with your group members and plan working on your assignments. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to make this video available very soon, and I will see you again next week. Thanks again, and bye-bye.